Hey everybody, welcome back to Living Traditions Homestead. Well, I've got a bit of a problem. I absolutely love to snack. And ever since Sarah and I went hardcore onto our keto diet, snacking has been one of the things that's been harder and harder to do. Now that's not necessarily a bad thing, but today I'm going to show you guys 3 of my favorite snacks. We're going to make them together. Now, I'm going to make keto versions of these snacks, but you guys don't have to make these keto if you don't want to. As we go along, I'll tell you guys how to make a non-keto version as we go. So we're going to be making 3 different things today. All of these are great in the summer. I love having them on hand because it's an easy snack. All of them are easy snacks to grab while you're busy outside or whatever. So the 3 things that we're going to be making today are pickled quail eggs. Now you could also make these with chicken eggs, but we're going to do pickled quail eggs today. We're also going to be doing ground beef jerky on the smoker, which you could also do in the oven or on a dehydrator. And we're going to be doing refrigerator pickles, a keto version. So I'm excited for all 3 of these. These are 3 things that we pretty much have on hand all the time now. Because like I said, in the summer, especially when we're busy outside, a lot of times we don't even stop for a real lunch. We just come in, we grab some snacks like this, some pickled eggs or some refrigerator pickles, maybe some jerky to get some good protein, and then we're back outside working. So I'm excited for this. Let's get started. Alright, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to get started on the pickled quail eggs because they need to sit for a little bit before we move on with those, so we're going to get those ready. And then I wanted to also show you guys a new gadget that I just got. This is an automatic quail egg peeler. It's an electric quail egg peeler. You guys, I've seen people use these with very mixed reviews in the past, but this company reached out to us and they wanted to send me one, and I'll be honest with you guys, I turned them down several times. And then finally I said, you know what, you can send one, but I probably won't do a video about it because I don't believe that they actually work. Well, you guys, I've used this thing already, and it's a miracle. This thing saves you so much time if you do it right. And that's what the company told me. They said, if you follow the directions, it will work perfectly. And you guys, it absolutely has. So I'm going to show you guys how to use this today as well. Now, other than them sending this to me, there's no other, I'm not getting paid to show this. In fact, like I said, I told them I wouldn't even show it if it didn't work. So I'm excited to show you guys this. All right, so we're going to be making 4 dozen pickled quail eggs today. Now, earlier today, I already washed these. We normally don't wash them when we bring them in the house, but I did wash them earlier this morning. Now, in the directions for this, it says to soak them in cold water for 20 to 30 minutes. So that's what we're going to do. Now these have been in the refrigerator as well, so they're already cold. So I'm not really sure why you're supposed to soak them in cold water for 20 minutes. All I know is when I followed the instructions to the T last time, this thing worked perfectly. So I'm going to get some cold water. Now we have really cold tap water because we have a deep well. So it's pretty cold, and like I said, the eggs are already cold. So I'm going to get this as cold as I can. And then we're going to stick these in the refrigerator for a half hour before we come back and boil them. Try to put them in here without cracking any. Yeah, I'm going to add just a little more water. Alright, I'm going to stick these in the refrigerator. And while those are refrigerating for 30 minutes, we're going to get started on the beef jerky. Like I said, we're going to be making a ground beef jerky today. I like this because it's inexpensive. It uses just ground beef, which, because we raise our own cattle, we have a lot of ground beef on hand most of the time. And it's just a really easy way to make beef jerky, and it's fast and it's delicious, and I just love having it here. So beef jerky in the store is so expensive, you guys. This is literally like a few spices and the price of whatever the ground beef is that you're buying. So there is a little prep work with this. I actually did this earlier today. You want to mix all of this together and get the ground beef marinating in the refrigerator for at least 4 hours before you start. Now the recipe that I'm going to be making today is my favorite, and this is a spicy beef jerky, but you can definitely make this without the Tabasco sauce, which I'm using homemade Tabasco sauce that Sarah made a couple of years ago. She canned it, and it's just absolutely delicious, but it's also very spicy. So you can either use store-bought Tabasco sauce, you can leave it out, you can do whatever you want to make it however spicy you want. It'll turn out great either way. So I put this all together earlier today. I'm going to go over the recipe with you real quickly. It's 2 pounds of ground beef, 2 tablespoons of soy sauce, 2 tablespoons of Worcestershire sauce, or however you say that, 2 tablespoons of the homemade Tabasco sauce, and then 2 teaspoons of salt, 2 teaspoons of black pepper, 2 teaspoons of garlic powder, 2 teaspoons of onion powder, and then 1 teaspoon of cayenne pepper. All you have to do after you get everything mixed together in the bowl is whisk it together, and then put your 2 pounds of ground beef into the bowl and just use your hands, get in there and really mix everything together really well. Once you're sure that everything is mixed together really well, just put it in a container in the refrigerator, and again, let it sit for at least 4 hours, but overnight is even better. All right, so our ground beef has been sitting, it's been about 5 hours since I did this, and you can see it here. Oh, it already smells so good, even though we haven't put it on the smoker yet. So the way that we're going to do this is I'm going to put the ground beef on these grill grates. These are just cheap ones from Walmart. I probably get 10 or 20 uses out of each one, and then I just throw them away. But they're a couple dollars for, I think, 3 or 4 of them. So these work really well. I like these a lot. Every summer I buy a bunch so that I have them for over the winter, because I don't always carry them in the winter. So what we're going to do is we're going to be using a jerky gun, and this is just, I don't know, I bought this actually probably 10 years ago at a thrift store. I'm sure at one point it had even more parts, but it has everything that I need. It just has a tip here on it. So we're going to load this with our beef jerky, and then we're going to just put this out onto our trays, and I'll show you guys as we do that. A couple things that you want to keep in mind. When you're doing this, you want to use the leanest ground beef that you can get. You don't want really fatty ground beef for making jerky. You want it to be as lean as possible. You're also going to want to spray your trays so that the ground beef doesn't stick to it when they're finished. And other than that, that's about all there is to it. I'm going to go ahead and spray these trays, and then we'll start putting the jerky onto the trays. Alright, so all we need to do is we're basically going to take pieces of our meat, and we're going to start loading this tube with the meat. And you want to try to do this with as little air bubbles in there as you can, although most of them will just kind of get pushed out on their own. But you really want to fill the tube up. Now I did want to mention as well that if you don't have one of these tubes and you don't want to invest in one, you can just roll this out in between pieces of parchment paper and then cut it with a pizza cutter or even a knife, and that works really well also. So you don't have to have one of these. Alright, so we're going to load this in here. And then this is basically just like a caulk gun. And we're going to basically just make big long strips all the way on our trays here. We're going to try to fit as much as we can. You want to leave a little space in between them, but it doesn't have to be a whole lot. Now, on this recipe, because we're not using any curing salt, this should be refrigerated when you're done. If you wanted to use curing salt in it instead of just regular, well, we use the Redmond's real salt, but if you wanted to use curing salt instead, then it could be shelf stable and you could just leave it out. But we don't really like the curing salt. We don't believe it's good for you. So we just use regular salt and then keep them in the refrigerator after they're done. So I'm going to get all of these trays loaded up, and then we'll get these out onto the smoker. Now, I've already got my smoker preheated to 185 degrees. So we are just going to put our trays on like this. Now, like I said, you can do this in a dehydrator or you can do it in your oven. Again, 185 degrees. You're not going to get the smoky flavor that you would get by having it on either a pellet smoker like this or some other type of smoker, but it will definitely still turn out very, very good. You could add a little bit of liquid smoke to the recipe if you want that smoky flavor in either your oven or your dehydrator. All right, this will take about 2 to 2.5 hours on the smoker. I'll probably check it once part way through just to make sure everything's going okay, but I've made enough of this now to know that it's right in that 2 to 2.5 hour range. Alright, I made a big mess in the kitchen, as you just saw, so I'm going to go in there quickly and clean up so that we can get started on those pickled eggs. We're going to move on to the next step of getting the eggs ready to use the egg peeler. So I've got water on the stove already boiling. What we're going to do now is we're going to add our cold eggs, the eggs that were in the cold water, we're going to add those to the boiling water. Now this next step after that is what I think is really probably one of the most important steps in using this egg peeler machine. And that is that once we put the eggs into the boiling water, we need to stir them, and we need to continue stirring them for 3 to 5 minutes. And what that does is that will center the yolk inside of the egg, so that when you peel them, and you can use, I mean, this is a good tip even for just if you're hand peeling them, then when you peel them, if it takes a little bit of the white off, it's not ripping it all the way to the yolk. So we're going to get these in here as quickly as we can. And then we're just going to continue to stir these while it comes back up to a boil. I'm going to watch it here. And we're going to do this for 3 to 5 minutes. And then we're going to boil these for a total of 10 minutes. Now I know for a lot of you that seems really, really long, but trust me that if you're going to use one of these automatic peelers, you have to boil them long. Now, I always boil my quail eggs super long, and I've done videos about this in the past, and a lot of you have told me that you would never do that, but I'm telling you, just in general with quail eggs, if you boil them for, I used to boil them for about 8 minutes, they peel so much better. And I don't think there's that much difference in how the egg is inside. So, I guess it's personal preference, but I would rather have an egg that peels nicely and is cooked all the way through. Alright, so we're just going to keep these moving around. I'll be back with you when the 5 minutes is up. Alright, it's been 5 minutes and I've been stirring these constantly. So I'm pretty confident that by this point the yolk is where it's going to be in the egg. So I'm going to set a timer for another 5 minutes and let these boil for 5 more minutes. Alright, our timer is going off, meaning that our eggs are done boiling. Let me go grab them. Alright, so now that they're done boiling, what we're going to do is we're going to take them out of the boiling water and we're going to put them immediately into cold water. Now this time I am using ice water because we're putting hot eggs in here. It's going to warm the water up and I want this to stay as cold as possible. So we're going to put these in. We just want these to cool off completely. So this is going to take a little while. Try not to put the boiling water in the ice water, just the eggs. Alright, so now that those are in the ice water, I'm actually going to put this back in the refrigerator for about 30 minutes or until those eggs are completely cooled all the way through. While we're waiting for these to cool off though, we're gonna move on to the next snack that we're making. Remember, we're making 3 things today. We're making the pickled eggs, the beef jerky, and the last thing is refrigerator pickles, my favorite keto version. Super, super simple, but still gives you that great taste of summer. All right, I'm gonna get these in the fridge, get set up for the next thing. All right, we should be able to make this next recipe in the 20 or 30 minutes that those eggs are going to be cooling. This is a pretty fast recipe. Now this you can scale up or down depending on what you wanna do. This time of year, you may be like us where you're just overrun with cucumbers. I could probably make, I don't know, 20 gallons of this right now if I wanted to, but we're just going to make a quart jar for today. A lot of times I will make a half gallon, especially if we're going to be having company or something like that, because these do tend to go pretty quickly. So I've got 3 cucumbers here. I think to start with though, I'm only going to use 2 because a quart isn't going to take that much to fill up. So we're going to go ahead and peel these since these are on the bigger side. If these were smaller cucumbers, you probably wouldn't have to peel them, but I like to once they get this size because the skins tend to get a little bitter. But the peels won't go to waste. They'll go to the pigs. Now this is one of those recipes that is so easy to make, but just really, to me, is something that you have to have during the summer is refrigerator pickles. When you're outside working in the heat and then you come in and there's that vinegary taste, I don't know, that's same with the pickled eggs. There's just something about cold vinegar, it kind of refreshes your body. So this is one of my favorite things to have in the refrigerator at all times during the summer. Now, in the past, before we were on a strict keto diet, I would make this with sugar, but I'm going to show you guys how we make it now. I think it tastes just as good, but again, if you want to make it with sugar, you can do that as well. So I'm going to use a mandolin. Can you tell I'm a gadget guy? I like the egg peeler, the mandolin, my jerky gun. Hey, I think those things are neat and they save us a lot of time when we have a lot of things to be doing around the homestead. So I'm going to use a mandolin to cut these as thin as I can. If you don't have a mandolin, just use a knife and cut them as thin as you can. And yes, I know there's supposed to be a thing that you hold this with. I'll just be careful. Now you can add onions to this recipe as well. I typically don't, but you definitely can. The whole key is to not make things too complicated. If you guys are like me, we're all way too busy to be complicated. But homemade food doesn't have to be complicated, and homemade snacks don't have to be complicated, and I think that's a good thing to learn. All right, so we've got our cucumbers packed in a jar. Now we're gonna make our brine to go onto the cucumbers. Now the brine is super easy to make. This is actually something my grandma used to make in the summer. I would always remember having like a Cool Whip container full of refrigerator pickles in the refrigerator. All right, so 1 cup of vinegar, and then we're going to add 1 cup of water as well. Now, traditionally, from here, you would add sugar. If you're going to make this with sugar, you can add either a half cup or a cup of sugar, depending on how sweet you want these. But we're not going to be using sugar today. We're going to be using liquid stevia. Now, the brand that we like to use is Stevia. We buy this from Azure Standard. If you guys haven't checked them out, check them out. But this brand we really, really like. Now you can find all different types of conversion charts online for stevia, and it will tell you what the equivalent is to table sugar. So I know just off the top of my head that for this we're going to want 2 teaspoons of stevia in our brine. And that's the equivalent of about a cup of sugar. Nice thing about using the liquid stevia is you don't have to worry about letting it dissolve like you do with sugar. Now you can use granulated stevia as well. That would work just fine. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and we're going to add this to the jar and see if we made enough. If not, we'll make more. But I think because we really put a ton of cucumbers in there that this is going to be enough. I think it's going to be about perfect. Now before I fill this all the way to the top, the last thing that I like to add to these, and you don't have to, but I like to add some dried dill. And I don't know, I never really measure. I put it on top. I put quite a bit, honestly, but so I like to put some dill in there, but you definitely don't have to. And then if you want a little bit more in there, which I think this is okay, but if you want a little bit more, you can just add a tiny bit more water. Alright, and then we're just going to put one of these plastic lids on. And we're going to shake this up, get that dill worked all the way through it. And just like that, that's all there is to making a keto version of the classic refrigerator pickles. These are going to be so delicious. I'm going to put these in the fridge so they start to cool off. Now because we cut these so thin, in just a couple hours they'll be ready to eat. They'll be better tomorrow, but in a couple hours they'll be ready to eat. And I absolutely love that. So I'm going to get these in the refrigerator to start cooling. And look at that, we made snack number 3 while we're waiting for the eggs to cool down. Alright, I'm going to get these in the fridge and then we'll get back to working on our eggs. I just checked on the eggs and they feel like they're chilled all the way through. So we're going to move on with the pickled eggs because we only have about an hour left on our jerky as well. So I'm going to drain the ice water off of these eggs. And now what you're supposed to do is you're supposed to crack all of the eggs so that the shells are really broken up. Now you can do this a couple different ways. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put them back into the pot that I boiled them in. Well, I could do them in here, but this is a family heirloom bowl of Sarah's, and I don't want to be the one to accidentally like drop it. So I'm going to do this in the metal bowl instead. We're going to get this out of the way. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to take these, I'm going to put the lid back on, and then I'm just going to shake these until the shells are really broken up. That looks like they're really broken up. Now I know that this seems like a lot of extra work just to peel eggs, like this whole process, but trust me, it's really not when you're just doing it. It's really not any longer. And when sometimes, like if we're doing like a lot of eggs, I might have 100 or more eggs at a time to peel, and that takes several hours of just sitting there peeling eggs. Where with this machine, it's literally like a few minutes. All right, so these are all broken up. It's time to get on to actually testing out the machine. Now, like I said, I've used it before and it worked great. We'll see if it works great again today. So we're going to get using the machine, and then we're going to start on the actual pickling process of the eggs. So the way that this egg peeler works is that right here there are 2 little rollers that have a rubber coating on them. And when you turn this on, you can see that those spin. It's really quiet. You want to make sure you never get your fingers in there because it'll actually pull your fingers between the rollers, and that's tight. So as those are spinning, what you're going to do is you're going to actually take an egg and you're going to set it on there. You can put about 3 or 4 on here at a time, and then you just tap the egg and that rubber peels the shell off, and then you can take the egg and put it away. So I'm going to zoom in close so you guys can actually see this working, but I wanted to kind of explain to you first how this works. Again, we're going to take a couple eggs, or I'm going to do 3 eggs at a time here. We're going to put them on, and then you just tap them, and it spins them, and it pulls the peel completely off. Isn't that awesome, you guys? Look at that. Oops, I forgot we're supposed to put this little bowl underneath to catch the peels. Look how amazing that is. This is going to be such a time saver when we're doing, especially when we're doing a lot of eggs. I don't know. I think gadgets are so cool. To think that somebody, you know, was really annoyed with having to peel quail eggs and was like, you know what, I'm going to make a machine to do that. I wish my brain worked like that. So now that we've got all of our eggs rinsed, which you guys, as I was looking at these, there's not a single one that isn't perfect or nearly perfect from the shelling process. I think that that's just awesome. So, keeping with the theme of today's video, which is snack food or convenience food, I'm not going to do anything super special with these. I've showed you guys different recipes in the past for making pickled eggs that, you know, everything is from scratch. But to be honest, today I'm going to keep this super easy. And this is one of my favorite types of pickled eggs anyway. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to fill the jar up. If they don't all fit, I'll just have to have the rest for lunch today. Or maybe I just won't make them all fit. Keep a couple for myself. Alright, so we've got our eggs in there. And really what we're going to do today is we're just going to use some kosher dill pickle mix that you can buy right at the grocery store. A lot of times when I'm in a hurry and I want to make pickled eggs so that we just have some on hand, this is exactly what I do. You can see I've actually got my instructions written right on the little bag here so that every time I remember. So we're going to make a quart jar. We're going to add 2 cups of water and 1 cup of vinegar to our pot, just like we did for the refrigerator pickles. But this time we're going to heat it up. So I'm going to put it in a pot here. And we're just going to take this over the stove and we're going to get it boiling. We're going to add 3 tablespoons of mix. I think so many people think that, first of all, eating keto is going to be a huge change for them, and that also that having snack food on hand is somehow this big ordeal if you're going to make it yourself, and it's really not. Look, we're making 3 snacks in about 2 hours today that are going to be healthy snacks for us to have on hand. All right, we're going to let this come back to a boil, and we're going to make sure all of that gets dissolved in there. All right, so that was up to a boil, and we've just taken it off the heat, and I've put it back into a measuring jar so that we can pour it easier. So all we're going to do now is we're just going to pour that pickling liquid onto the eggs. Now, I did make too much, but I did that on purpose because I'm going to make a second batch in a little bit, and I want this liquid already made up. So that's all there is to making super easy pickled eggs. Like I said, you can do this with regular chicken eggs, duck eggs, but I like the quail eggs because they're just a quick, easy snack. So we're going to put this in the refrigerator at least overnight before we eat any. But as soon as that all kind of starts to soak in, gosh, you guys, these are so good and just such a great snack to have on hand. All right, so this is snack number 2 done. We've got about 30 minutes left on the beef jerky. I've gone out and checked on it already. It's looking great. Can't wait to bring you guys along in a little bit. As soon as that timer goes off, I'll bring you guys out there with me and we'll get that off the smoker and bring everything in. And you guys, 3 easy snacks in about 2 hours. Well, the jerky is all done on the smoker. Let's take a look at it, take it off, and take it in the house. I don't know if you guys can see that or not, but I'm going to take these off. These trays are a little hot, and I didn't bring any gloves out with me, but you can see, look how awesome that looks. I'm going to put them all here on a cookie sheet, and then we'll take them right into the house. You guys, look how amazing that looks. I wish you could smell it. It smells so awesome. So the best way to get these off of the trays is to use a spatula. They shouldn't stick if you oiled them well, but it still helps to just kind of peel it loose. And that's what we end up with. I'd break these in half because half a piece, I just think it's a better size. But you don't want these to get so, they shouldn't be crispy. They should be able to bend a little bit without breaking. If they're crispy, you got them two done. Well, look at that nice tray of jerky. That is amazing. That is such a good snack. Now this will keep in the refrigerator for several weeks, probably a month really. So you guys, you can make plenty of it at a time so you don't have to do it real often. So we've got our tray of jerky. We've got our refrigerator pickles, which could have easily been doubled. We've got our pickled eggs, which also could easily be doubled depending on the size of your family. You guys, 3 amazing snacks, especially for this hot weather. I just like having things that I can grab and go. All of them fall into the keto diet that Sarah and I have been eating now for quite some time. But again, if you don't want to make keto versions, go ahead and make them with sugar instead of other things. You guys, I wanted to do this video so that I could show you that having convenience food while you're either busy working on the homestead or because you're doing the keto diet doesn't have to be inconvenient. This is a very easy way to make a bunch of snacks pretty quickly and have them on hand so when you're feeling hungry, you can just grab something and go. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you give these recipes a try. Let me know if you try it. Let me know if you have other snacks that you think might fall into the same type of thing. Let me know what you're doing at your homestead. As always, remember that the absolute best way that you can help us here is to just share our videos on all of your social media. If you haven't hit that subscribe button yet, make sure you do that before you leave. And as always, thank you so much for stopping by the homestead. Take care, and God bless.